All right. Today on our show, we're diving into AI and helping us try to analyze our tournament reports. And so we've been taking AI and utilizing and having all of our athletes do tournament reports. And we're going to give you kind of a little breakdown on that structure here on our podcast today. I'm your host, Jason Curley with Shelby Chapa. And welcome to the Rotation Station. This is the official podcast of Storm Performance Volleyball in Corpus Christi, Texas. So let's get into this today. So with a little background of what we're doing, a couple of weeks ago, all this tournaments run this year, we have had our athletes fill out tournament reports. And we were having them do them on paper, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we work to like kind of create a report just to really more so like work to combat like the mental part of the game, because volleyball is such a mental sport. It's just full of you make errors, another team gets a point. They make errors, another team gets a point.
Yep. And sometimes it's you make a lot of errors and you give the other team a whole lot of points.
A whole lot of points, yeah.
It depends.
So I think we really work to kind of like get to see where the athletes were mentally, like when they're making those errors and what the kind of thought process was behind it to help them get out of it faster, or at least see where they're at. So that way we know while we're coaching in a game, like what it's going to take to get these athletes to perform at the best level that they can.
Now, the problem with that is when you are having all your athletes write that down on paper, that's a lot to read.
It is.
And you do have to have an analytical mind in order to kind of summarize that. And a lot of times you can kind of just skim through them and see some reflections, but really and truly to analyze every single athlete on how they did and what they did, it takes a lot. And it takes a lot mentally to be able to do that. And every coach is different. Some of them may be able to do that really well, and some may not be able to do that well. So about 2 tournaments ago, and we're in the middle of our tournament season here in 2025, March 2025, we decided let's try something a little different. Let's create this on a Google form, and that way all of our athletes, we can get all of their athletes into a Google form.
Yeah, and it just makes it a little more hands-on and easier. Like, so the idea behind it is we have this Google form obviously ready prior to going into the tournament, so that way once the tournament finishes, I'll go in and we use SportsU as our platform to really communicate with all of our athletes and parents. We go in and we post that. So that way, while it's fresh on the athlete's mind, ideally, like coming home from the tournament, you're in the car. Most of them don't drive. You're with your parents. You're just in the back seat on your phone. You're going through this reflection to kind of see how you felt like you performed mentally throughout the span of the tournament.
Right. And the purpose of that was also so that we could then take that and use an AI like ChatGPT or Claude and take that and distill all that data down and find some similar kind of commonalities, because that's what AI is really good at doing. It can take all of that and it's different. Like we have 203 athletes. And so if you were this last weekend, we had 16 teams competing. So that was roughly about 180, 185 athletes. So to be able to analyze all that as a club and try to get something, if you weren't doing this with AI, it is just very, 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 very challenging. And that is one of the good things that AI can do. So I took it all and created a project in Claude. That's what I use. And I took the Google form. I had that Google form put into a spreadsheet, because you can do that in your Google form in all the responses. And then I took that spreadsheet and I uploaded it into Claude. And I gave it a few instructions, but basically said analyze all this and act as a volleyball analyst, a coach that works on mental performance, and give me a summary. And it literally took, I think the last tournament we had 100 and something responses, and it took all of that and gave us some great findings. And it was really astounding to get the kind of feedback that we saw.
For sure. And I mean, I think it's it's great to get to see like kind of where the athletes at, engage, like, hey, you go, you obviously go through and read your team's responses and you're like, oh, I could see that. Like, oh, I can see that. Like maybe their response was, some questions that we asked was like, what causes them to lose focus in a game? And, they list these things that, a lot of the commonalities is errors, making errors, the pressure that comes from the errors and trying to get out of that. So seeing that and you're like, oh yeah, I see that. And then kind of giving you a tool to say, okay, here's what you're going to do to help them kind of get out of that. And really like what the focus point is on helping your team obviously be at the end of the day more successful in their mental health or in their mental game. So really helping them with that mental part of the game, because they do hold a lot of pressure, and whether that's pressure from that they put on themselves, whether it's pressure that comes from their parents, right, whether it's pressure that comes from us as coaches or other teammates. So there's a lot of things that go into that.
Right. And I think the first time I did this, one of the main things it gave us, one of the main kind of categories it did is it talked about cascading failure, or cascading. What was the term it used? It was about mistakes, cascading mistakes, yeah. And it talked about a lot of the triggers, and a lot of our athletes were very open with what those triggers were. Some of them were, I look at the score and their mental focus got off because they were fixated on the score, or at some point in the game the score table doesn't add that 1 point, and they're sitting there on the court yelling 1 point, and they just totally lose focus. And other things were missing a pass or missing a serve. And just that cascading mistake,
bad calls from officials, things like that just like they just obviously help them or stop them from thinking of like what the next thing is. Obviously like, hey, you're dwelling on that mistake, and then it turns into another mistake, and then it turns into another mistake and another mistake, and so then that's where it comes into play, where we can kind of see like, hey, this is a trigger. It causes stress in those moments. What can we do to alleviate that?
Yeah, and one of the neat things I did after that is I had it really break down, the mental focus side of the game, and with our teams, and then I had it make 2 reports. One was a report to coaches on what some of the ideas they could do, and it broke down 4, 5, 6 things, that coaches could implement, things like, and athletes, things like a team reset, that if you're making a 1 or 2 mistakes, that the team would come together and maybe they have a code word or something that they could do.
Their code word was cheeseburger.
Yeah, mine was code red. And then the next practice, everything was code red. And I'm like,
cheeseburger.
Guys, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And then they learned from that, and I think in the tournament I heard them say it, like 2 or 3 times, and then just teaching them to have a reset themselves. Yeah. So if I make that mistake, that I initially can have a reset, and maybe it's just wiping my hands like this, or brushing off the mistake, brushing it off my legs, or walking to a line and
I'm real big on breath, on it. So like take a breath. Calm yourself. A lot of times, 9 times out of 10, if we're taking a timeout, no matter what point of the game it is, it's like before I even talk to the girls, it's take a deep breath. Because there is, like, even myself as a coach, there's a lot of emotions, adrenaline, and sometimes you're just like, your body's just like, and you just need that, like, take a breath. Right. Just take a deep breath, focus yourself, and then let's talk about what we need to do. What's the game plan? And
so we're going to tell you a couple of the questions. So that was the first tournament. We just took a lot of the questions we had on our paper, and because it was really simple to do, we thought, let's elevate it. And we asked them a few more questions, and on this one we gave them a few more drop down. Yeah. Instead of having, they have to type out a couple of their responses. But on this one, we had them break down what position they were taking. So then we could then look at across the board how our setters do. How do our setters do.
Yeah. How do our 6 rotation players do? Yep. Yeah.
And so we could really, and again, this is where AI, it really thrives. And it's able to take that and pull all of that data out and give us a real breakdown. So we're going to give you a couple of the questions that we ask on our athlete report.
Yeah, so we start with rating their mental game. So how would you rate your overall focus and concentration during the tournament? And our drop-down cues on pretty much all of them start from need significant improvements to excellent. So need significant improvement is frequently distracted, struggles to stay engaged in plays. Below average, so inconsistent focus, lost concentration at key moments. Average is stayed focused most of the time but had lapses in critical situations. Above average, maintained strong focus, stayed locked in throughout most of the tournament. And then excellent, being fully engaged, mentally sharp, and consistently locked in every play. So all of our...
And you would do pretty much that ranking, and it may change a little bit on
your positional stuff that we asked.
Yeah, it was always a needs significant improvement up to excellent with average right in the middle.
So then we asked, so with the mental part is how rate your overall average. So again, going from 1, needs significant improvement, to 5 being excellent. And then some of the questions where they had to kind of write out was, what moments did you feel mentally strong? So when did they feel mentally strong in a game? What situations cause you to lose focus or confidence? So
and that one's asking for specific
yeah,
triggers.
this one asks, it says identify triggers such as pressure, mistakes, or external distractions. How did you handle mistakes or setbacks during the match? Did you recover quickly or did you dwell on them? Do you feel in control of your emotions? Why or why not? And I think that's a really big one that you kind of see the answers vary. Like, if somebody answered like they didn't, going back to how would they rate their overall, focus and concentration. And then they'd say like, oh, it wasn't that good. Like, my emotions were all over the
they
place.
it was above average, and then on controlling their emotions they would write down that it wasn't, and there was this disconnect we started to see as well sometimes.
Did you make good decisions on the court? And then are there any moments that stand out with those good decisions? So that's kind of like the mental part, like that breakdown of the mental part. And then we went into rating their skills. So seeing how they felt like they performed in all of the different kind of skill areas. So rating their serving. And then again, we rated all the rating on the drop downs were need significant improvement to excellent. And then the drop down for obviously those players who don't serve. So maybe they sub for the setter, or they're, one of the middles that doesn't serve. So we have that. So the need significant improvements, serves are inconsistent and often result in error. Below average, serves occasionally effective but lacks consistency. Average, serves are consistent but not particularly strong or aggressive. Above average, serves are reliable and often put opponent under pressure. Excellent, the serves are consistent, strong, accurate, and significant advantage. And so that rating system was kind of the same throughout. So they rated their serve receive for the weekend, rated their setting, rated their
and again,
hitting.
on each of these, if they weren't in that position,
they're not in that position.
Not set.
Rated your defense, and in the defense we included blocking and passing. So again, it has that need significant improvement as the 1, and then 5. They rated themselves a 5. They were effective. They had high level anticipation, shut down attacks, controls the ball with confidence. And then we just rated their overall performance. So how they felt like they did overall in this weekend. Again, the drop downs are need significant improvement all the way to 5, excellent. And then how would they rate their overall hustle? So same drop downs, 1 being need significant improvement and 5 being excellent. And then how would they rate their communication with their teammates? So again, that rating system of 1 through 5.
And so a lot of these drop downs, and we're going to give you a couple more questions. A lot of these, we designed them so that it would take our athletes less time. We didn't want them to have to type out everything, because then you start to get, I don't want to do this at all. But then there's a lot like triggers and things like that they have to be able to write down things like that. So a couple of more other ones was rating yourself physically. How would you rate yourself? And this one we didn't give a drop down on. We wanted them to give us what they thought.
And so it was, how did you feel physically during the game? Are there any areas of improvement? And these are like short answer response type questions. How well did you prepare for the tournament physically and mentally? Consider factors like nutrition, fitness, sleep, mindset, and what areas you can improve on. And then the last area was just to finish with something good. You know, a lot of times it's the focus, and not so much the focus is on everything you could have done, but like I should have done, should I say. So just really focusing on what were a couple good moments that your team. So the last question was, what was one good thing your team did well this weekend, and describe it in a couple of sentences. So I think we had a really good balance of the mental, how they actually performed, and then their like physical performance, like how they felt, to really get a good general idea of where they were.
Right.
Really where they were going into the tournament, and kind of how they rated themselves and how that correlated with their actual performance.
And the big thing about this was for us to be able to start helping them. Because if you see, and you don't even know, but if you don't even know, how do you help your athletes other than screaming at them or you should do this or that? But when you start to see that most of their mistakes come from not just the skill, but it comes from mental, and it allows us as a club and our coaches to be able to start effectively helping their team. So then, what I did again is put all of our athletes' responses and get an overall, but then I also can now break that down per team. So a team like my own, I took all of my teams and I threw it in, and I got specifically, because a team like our 15s team, obviously our 15 gold, they won the tournament, so their responses are going to be way different than
and
my
then
team.
Obviously you can see that, or you can see how maybe someone who doesn't have as much playing time, their response varies from a teammate who plays 6 rotation, and how their lack of focus and what they did and how they felt is different from a teammate who is on the court the entire time. So there's just a lot of different things that you can see. And then also like on the aspect of like, you can go back and show this to kids. Like, okay, look at how you rated all of your performances. They weren't very well. And then look at the last question. How did you prepare for this tournament physically and mentally? And they answer, oh, well, I didn't get enough sleep and I kind of really didn't prepare. Well, then how do we think we're going to perform at a tournament if we're not doing the things to physically and mentally prepare?
And when you see that 8 out of 10 of your athletes aren't preparing, then again, then you see that focus in your performance, and say, okay, next tournament, parents, here's what we need to do. And I even broke down and asked the AI, I said, create a guide for our parents based off of all of our responses. What were 4 or 5 things that our parents, how could they help them?
How
could they help them on the mental, and a lot of it was, a parent sometimes sitting on the sideline and, and the kid sees that. And sometimes even as a coach, I pull an athlete out after one mistake and boom, that starts a cascading mistakes from that. Now, sometimes you have to do that, but sometimes you start to realize, okay, maybe I could do it in a different way. Maybe I can talk to them and take that moment, even though we don't really have time. So there was a lot of benefits to this. And then on top of that, I decided, let's get all of our stats from the tournament. So because of the fact that we use ball time, and this is not a promo, but ball time is really great for us. Allows our athletes to be able to see what they do, make highlight videos, but it stats all of the games. And so I go in, for my team, and I kind of fix a few little things it's not picking up. Had all 5 of our games all statted out, and I got the overall stats for the whole weekend. And I downloaded that, and I threw it in just to say, let's look at how they respond, how they thought they respond, versus how they actually kind of performed. And a lot of it was, some of them overestimated and some of them underestimated their ability or that weekend. And then also learned that our day 1 was really bad and our day 2 was really good. And so leaving out on that high note, our athletes felt they performed at a higher level for the whole weekend when they actually really didn't. And so there was a lot of factors that, and I was able to even throw that into the AI and put that, here's how we did on day 1, here's how we did on day 2. Would that affect everything? And it analyzed that based off that and gave me just some outstanding reports. And I was able to even create a little guide for my team. growing from good to great, you know, and it gave them, it started with all of their strengths, talked about their amazing serving, because I have a really amazing serving team. Their positive attitudes, because a lot of them put down, they did have positive attitudes, and it really did show. And their ability to come back, you know, and it just went down and broke out all the great things that they did, and then gave them all some growth opportunities as a team that we could do. And it even gave them their personal superpowers, which was really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool.
And I do 14-year-olds, so I thought that was pretty cool for my 14.
And I mean, I think it makes an impact, especially like, you know, we talk about volleyball is such a mental game. And you may not have the ability to hire mental, coaches who focus on, you know, the mental aspect of the game in, whatever the sport you coach. So I think it is a great tool to be able to utilize, where you can just, if you help your athletes on that aspect, and maybe it's just your tone and how you change, you know, instead of, hey, you need to do this, just reframe. Next time, let's do this a little, and you just change, you know, that like that hard, like, you know, you need to do this, and oh my God, you're not doing that, to, hey, next time, get your hands up a little faster.
Right.
And just really reframing that, where it's, you know, still telling them the things that they need to hear, but in a manner that's just just a tad bit more encouraging.
Yeah,
where they feel like, hey, it's not just you should have done this. It's no, she believes in me, or he believes in me.
Yeah, because if you
gonna...
are a coach and you get some honest feedback, and some of their triggers are the way you're coaching, that only helps you become a better coach to your athletes. And it doesn't mean you got to change, but you may need to change how you respond to them, the way you think, your delivery, and that can be the difference between your team going from good to great, or even just a little bit.
Yeah, and it may just be a difference from how you coach 14-year-olds is different than how you coach 15-year-olds, and maybe you're used to just coaching 15-year-olds. So you do have to reframe a little bit, and or the way you coach 17-year-olds is obviously different than the way you coach 14-year-olds. They're just a higher level of game IQ. So
yeah, because how you would coach high level performers is way different than how you'd coach 12-year-old
for sure. And you
team.
can still have the same accountability, and you can still want the same thing. Like, obviously you have the same set of goals and expectations. It doesn't mean you think any less of them, but how you push them to get there is obviously different than how, it's just different age gaps. It's the same way of, like, I would coach 12s completely different than I coach 14s, just based on their mental capacity too at that age.
So to kind of sum up what we did, if you followed along this whole journey and you're like, oh, what was all that stuff you did? Yeah, there was a lot of information on there. First thing we did was create a Google form, which is free. Create a Google form, and we put all the questions in there.
Yeah, and then we came up with these questions just by asking ChatGPT. Like, hey, here are some things that we're wanting to...
And we even said, hey, here's a rating system.
Yeah.
Can you...
And so it's just utilizing the resources that you have. Like, if there's something that you're thinking of and you want to do and you don't, know exactly how to put it together, just ask. And, that's what AI is there for. It's a tool to be able to help you just in anything.
Yep. And it's as simple as starting out. I'm a coach for a volleyball team or basketball team. I coach this
level,
and I want to create some reflections, some questions for my athletes to respond after a game.
Yeah, and it's that simple, and then putting it into a Google form. So obviously you don't have to buy this like premium version of ChatGPT. You can use the free version. Google is free, and so use these tools and resources. And us as a club, our athletes pay for ball time, so we do have that as a resource, and that's not free. But maybe whatever stat system that you use, and you can input stats in that way.
Start where you can, where you're free. I pay for a ProCloud account, which is $20 a month, which I just feel that's in today's world, it's needed. Also pay for one in ChatGPT, but you don't have to. You could pick one of those. I do everything in a Claude project. I won't go into all of that, but it's as simple as a Google form. Turn the Google form into a spreadsheet, and then upload that into an AI and just say, look, I'm a volleyball coach, analyze this and give me some feedback. And then even go, give me a deep dive. Give me things that I would miss. And you would be astounded at just the answers.
The answers, yeah.
and the collaboration that you would have with
For sure. And I mean, I think if it's a way and a tool that you can help your kids get better and you can help your athletes perform at a higher level, and it's as easy, I mean, does it take a little bit of extra time? Obviously, but if you want your kids to perform, at the level they can, and their mental game is part of what's holding them back, which is 9 times out of 10 as a coach.
Every team.
It's what areas are you struggling? The mental game, and a lot of it has to do with volleyball being a game of mistakes. Yep. And mistakes, we can work and work and work and work to play that next point mentality as much as you want, but still at the end of the day, you're human. And when mistakes happen, you dwell on them. And it's just trying to figure out ways to help your athletes reset and move on from those mistakes just a little bit faster.
Yeah, and I watched a video that talked about the best players in the world, the top 5% athletes in the world, and one of the things they do best is move on. They move on from a mistake like that, and that's what separates them from the 95% of athletes in the world. And so if we could just notch our players up just a little bit, we don't have to go into the 5%.
1% better.
1% better, 2% better, and maybe 10% by the end of the year on that mental game, and teaching them how to prepare mentally and respond mentally in a game.
Yeah, and I think it's you as a coach, if you take that part of your coaching seriously, it just increases your kids' level of play. It helps you be a better coach. I think with society the way it is today's, you just have to coach a little bit differently, and you have to speak a little bit differently, and if that's just all it takes to help your kids get outside of that, that frame of just like holding back just a little bit, because you do have a tendency of athletes will dwell on mistakes and they'll hold back because of those mistakes. They're afraid to make the mistakes. So if you can get them out of that, then you're just going to see, your team's success continue to grow.
Yep. Well, hope that helped you this week, and I hope that we gave you some resources. And if you really want to just connect with me, you can, especially on our Instagram, just message me on our Instagram. If you want to know more, we can give you a list. I can give you a list of the questions, real simple, if you want to do it yourself. And I'll be more than glad to help you. Again,
share
just
a copy.
Just Storm Performance on Instagram, and I will reach out to you if I get that. So thank you for being with us this week. This is the Rotation Station. It is the official podcast for Storm Performance Volleyball in Corpus Christi, Texas. If you do want to know more about us, go to ccstormvolleyball.com or search Storm Performance on Facebook, on Instagram, on anything, and you will find us there. And until next week, just keep pushing forward.